DEI is really important in that it is a constant reminder of the need to have unique and diverse experiences and perspectives on any team.
What is the pros and cons of implementing DEI initiatives in corporate America?
I think the intention of DEI and what it is today are probably two different things.
Kyle McDowell, best-selling author, inspirational speaker, and leadership expert. What would you say today is the state of corporate America? What does it look like?
Brother, the fact that you're even asking that question, I think, is illustrative of a bigger problem. It's hard to get behind an organization or a company that I feel they are pandering to me. But if I can actually make an impact, change the world, leave people around me better off than they were when I first met them, and make money, man, now we're on to something.
Can DEI truly create a culture of excellence, or has it strayed from its original intent?
There is literally no such thing as DEI in the world of professional sports as it relates to those that create the product, those that are actually playing the game. And there's no DEI because results matter more than anything else. It's important to take a step back and think about what it is a business exists to do.
If you were to be tasked with going about solving this problem, but in a different way, a more productive way, do you have an idea of what that would even look like? Kyle, the mission of the Life Edge is to help people learn, grow, and succeed by discovering their edge in life, the thing that makes them unique. So what would you say has been your edge in life?
At this stage of my life, Chris, it has to be experience. And I'm not sure if you've encountered that with other guests on your show, but the edge, I think, that put me in the position I'm in today is different than the edge that I live with today. And I think I'd be remiss if I didn't just say experience, because after spending nearly three decades in corporate America, that I believe armed me to approach what I do for a living now in a very different, very informed way. So, had we met maybe, I don't know, a dozen or even 15, 20 years ago, my edge would be, I think my edge was tenacity. I was raised by a couple of really hardworking, middle class at best, commission driven parents. They were both in sales, and if they didn't sell, we didn't eat. So I learned from a very young age the value of putting in an honest day's hard work and the value of a dollar through those two very important people in my life. And that, it was through that upbringing that the tenacity and kind of the can-do attitude is something that would have probably been the biggest edge that I would point to.
I love that idea of experience being the edge, because that's something I think we take for granted a lot of times. And so many people have so many unique experiences that they could leverage to succeed. And I think we underrate that quite a bit.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, it's never been more obvious to me than the last handful of years. So I exited corporate America in 2019 after leading tens of thousands of individuals at really marquee names in corporate America. And those nearly 30 years are just chock full of so many experiences, a lot of wins, a handful of losses, some disappointments, some really successful and fun times as well. And what I think opened my eyes to experience being the edge is when I left corporate America to write my book and launch my own speaking, executive coaching, and consulting business, I realized it's such a saturated space. There are a million quote unquote experts and gurus, and when you peel the layers back of their experience, in most cases, the work that they've done, a lot of it's hypothetical. A lot of it is not actually born out of real life experiences leading, multi-location, sometimes international operations at scale. So I just have a hard time taking advice from a quote unquote guru that has never actually walked in those shoes. And that's where I believe experience is not only my edge, but candidly, it's a differentiator for what I do versus most in my space.
I can't agree more. And I do know you have a best-selling book. It's called Begin With We. And the subtitle is 10 Principles for Building and Sustaining a Culture of Excellence. So how would you define a culture of excellence?
I get that question a lot, and it's something I talk to a lot because we often talk about aspiring to create great cultures in the workplace and creating a culture that is, welcoming to all. It encourages diverse experiences and opinions and allows people to be their best. But for me, a culture of excellence equally weighs the teams and members of the team's personal goals, their professional goals, and then, of course, the company's goals. And when I give that as my definition, sometimes I get some funny looks back. Hang on a second. How does a culture of excellence in the workplace involve and include one's personal goals? Well, without including one's personal goals, in other words, as a leader of a team, I need to get close enough to each member of my team to understand what their goals and what their growth aspirations and the things that they want to do in their life. I need to understand those to help enable the delivery and achievement of those goals. Where so many bosses and leaders, they behave when they learn a member of the team has an objective or a series of goals that are different than anything that they can offer, and they're not part of the company's longer term vision by their own admission, like they want to go do something else. Perhaps they have a side hustle. It's the natural tendency for bosses to almost treat them as if that person, that employee, is dead to them. Because if you don't have a desire to take on more within my team and grow within this company, then why should I invest my time in you? Man, what a mistake. When we align on the personal goals of those on our team, especially when they want to do things outside of our team, perhaps outside of our company, even outside of our industry, when we show we care about them and their growth more than we care about the results they can deliver, do you think they work less hard? Are they less committed to us? Of course not. So for me, it's always been really important to understand what makes individuals on my team tick, what motivates them, what inspires them, and that is how we contribute and build to what I've coined a culture of excellence.
You mentioned that you have tens of years of experience in corporate America, and this is a term that we hear a lot. And for me personally, and I know a lot of other people, we have an idea of what we think corporate America is, but I've never worked in corporate America. I've been in small business my entire life. And there's tons of small business owners out there who hear corporate America and culture and all these words that are derived from this idea of corporate America. And we think big elitist firms that only hire from Ivy League colleges, and that you have to have certain exit exam scores to even think of working at this company. But then you have the complete opposite end of that spectrum, and you think Google and Silicon Valley, and like it's this laissez-faire, like kind of college party vibe, but we're still getting work done. What would you say today is the state of corporate America? What does it look like?
In terms of its makeup, what is corporate America?
What is the picture of corporate America? So when someone says the phrase corporate America, people can actually get an accurate representation of what that means.
Brother, the fact that you're even asking that question, I think is illustrative of a bigger problem. And it was a problem I tried to address when I wrote the book. And that is this tendency to have these buzzword bullshit bingo, right? By the way, you realize our vocabularies are even different. The way we speak inside the workplace versus how we speak with our loved ones, friends, family, and otherwise outside of the workplace are typically two very different sets of words. Like, nobody goes home and asks their significant other how they did on their deliverables that day. So I think your question is really grounded in something much bigger. Corporate America, for me, is a synonym for the workplace. I wish it was a synonym, but it's a synonym for the workplace. And that can be, man, that's nonprofit. That's it's actually, believe it or not, it's sports teams and franchises. I've worked with some of those as well. It is anywhere you have a collective group of people drawing a paycheck to deliver a specific set of outcomes. And that can be a product or service for any discrete population, the buyer, their customers. Mm-hmm. There are some nuances, obviously, between what we call small business, between big behemoth business. At the end of the day, it doesn't matter because we're talking about people. We're talking about how to inspire, motivate, get the most out of people, allow them to find the fulfillment that they deserve, enable them to grow in a way that allows them to be proud of the work that they're putting in, whether it's a barista or a CEO at a financial firm. You still have an opportunity to help others around you and deliver a product or service that that also achieves the mission of the organization. So to me, it's a fancy word, a fancy way of saying the workplace.
Right now, diversity, equity, and inclusion, or DEI, have become a major focal point in corporate America, especially since 2020. And so from your viewpoint, what is DEI? And then what is the pros and cons of implementing DEI initiatives in the corporate America?
Ooh, man. A lot of waterfront there. And at its most simple form, you described it: DEI, diversity, equity, and inclusion. I think there are two answers embedded in, multiple answers, but kind of two paths that come to mind when you ask that question. So we've defined what it is in terms of just the definition. I think the intention of DEI and what it is today are probably two different things. I've been in massive organizations. My last two roles, I led 30,000 employees collectively, multi-billion-dollar P&Ls, really, really big operations. And DEI is really important in that it is a constant reminder of the need to have unique and diverse experiences and perspectives on any team. I don't care if it's the chess team, the bowling team, the corporate America team, the hardware store team. I don't care. It's always important to get unique perspectives, because it's through those perspectives we get the best ideas on the table, and we are much closer to optimal outcomes. I think the spirit of creating DEI initiatives was in the right place, because those unique experiences are often in the form of underrepresented populations, minorities, females. So the spirit and intention was, we're going to get these diverse perspectives and experiences by requiring firms to hire some of these underrepresented populations. And on the surface, it sounds like the right thing. And when executed in a fair and judicious way, it is the right thing. Where I believe it's gone is not what was originally intended. So if we agree that that was the original intention, and we don't even have to agree on that, but if, again, I said this before we started recording, I've got lots of opinions. It doesn't make them right, doesn't make them fact. But my opinion on where it's gone is a bit troubling. And I think to accurately reflect my opinion on this, it's important to take a step back and think about what it is a business exists to do. At the end of the day, we go into business, men and women around the world, they start businesses mostly to make money. If they can have an impact and make the world a better place as a result of those efforts, again, it's mostly, there are exceptions to what I'm saying. But if I can actually make an impact, change the world, leave people around me better off than they were when I first met them, and make money, man, now we're on to something. But at the end of the day, nobody goes into business to lose money. But where DEI, in my opinion, again, has gone awry is when we start compromising the need and ability to put the best people in the positions that we're trying to fill, create the best possible team that we can, to deliver the best results we can, to make us the most competitive, viable business that we can be. If we compromise that approach just to check a box, to fill any one of any one DEI requirement or objective, by definition, we are not putting our best team on the field. Mm-hmm. And I get pushback on this analogy I'm about to share in a moment a lot, but I do believe it really is a sound comparison. Look at the world of sports, professional sports. There is literally no such thing as DEI in the world of professional sports as it relates to those that create the product, the basketball mm-hmm. player on the field, the football player on the field, those that are actually playing the game. And there's no DEI in those worlds because results matter more than anything else, just mm-hmm. about more than anything else. Winning championships is the obvious objective. And it's black and white. This is why we're here. We're here to win. And we don't see, this might be a crude analogy, but it's true. We don't see an NBA scout or an NBA head coach saying, we don't have enough 5-footers on our team. The best players historically throughout the history of the NBA have been, 6 foot and above, sometimes well into the 6 foot, 7 foot range. So to say that we're short 6-footers or sub 6-footers, we need to get those guys on the team, is counterproductive to us putting the best group of individuals on the court. Where it's become a really slippery slope inside of the corporate world is when we over-index on one's attributes, their profile, their characteristics, sometimes their race, ethnicity, their gender. When we over-index on that, on the expense of the expertise that they can bring to the table to make our team better, make our company better, make the product that we serve better, it's a fast path to going out of business. And at the root of all of this, especially in the U.S., is a capitalist approach. Or capitalism is our free market approach. And I think it was, Adam Smith was the invisible hand of economics many, many years ago said, we don't need government intervention to say consumers will go here, consumers will go there. A capitalist marketplace says, may the best man win, may the best woman win, may the best product win, may the best team win. So as an entrepreneur, as a business owner, as a leader inside of corporate America, it's always my goal to put the best people on the field. In my world, that means put the best people on the team that can deliver the best results, that can make my company have the greatest impact on this planet that we want to have. And yes, that involves making money. So, I think that's, again, my opinions, but at the end of the day, really smart intentions to get the best, rather the most unique and diverse experiences on the team, but that has become a substitute for the very first line of criteria being, are they the best, most capable, able to deliver what it is that we deliver for a product or service? Can they make us better? I think when we trade one for the other, it's a slippery slope to obsolescence.
First, let's go back to your initial description of what the intentions were of the DEI rollout. Like, that makes perfect sense. The more diverse opinions and ideas and experiences we have is going to lead us to the best result. But when you place that over things like competency or the best, and that becomes we're choosing for diversity rather than competency or the best fit. That, to me, as a business owner, seems counterintuitive to the goal of owning a business and why I started the business. Now, going back to, I don't, small business again. This is not something I understand as far as how big of a problem is it? Where does the actual problem lie? I think we're dealing with a very large topic here and trying to answer it all in one 60-minute conversation. But if you were to be tasked with going about solving this problem, but in a different way, a more productive way, do you have an idea of what that would even look like?
Wow. I can't help but, when I think about that question, I think it's short-sighted and naive not to acknowledge that historically underrepresented races or ethnicities might be entering this equation at a disadvantage. Mm-hmm. And, so many people dance around this topic as not to offend, but I think it's really important. As a business owner or a leader inside of a team or an organization, as I mentioned, it's my job to put the very best performers on the team to deliver the very best results we can so we can thrive in the marketplace. Mm-hmm. Now, when I say that is, I think I think it's incredibly obvious. Now, it is also a fact that historically underrepresented races or ethnicities may be underrepresented in certain roles inside of the workplace. And I'm far from the expert to quantify, what ethnicity is not appropriately represented in any one niche or position. I'm far from intimate enough with those details to speak on that. But my point is, there's a bigger arguably systemic opportunity for us to invest time, energy, care, and even dollars into those underrepresented races and ethnicities to put them in positions to be one of those finalists, more than 1 out of 10 or whatever the underrepresented ratio might be. In other words, I'm going to make up this scenario, and this may land flat. This may have the scenario in my brain may fall flat. But here's what I'm thinking: if there is data to suggest, we'll say race X, because I don't want to be accused of being discriminatory. Race X, you can substitute any race you like. If there's data to suggest that race is underrepresented in pick a profile of worker in the workplace, and if we're able to trace back the socioeconomic, the experiences, the quantifiable data that tells us they have not been brought up or educated in a way that allows them to participate in that niche, to be a player in that role, then I think as a society, it's important for us to invest our energy, time, care, yes, dollars, our resources into those socioeconomically depressed areas, into those underrepresented profiles in the form of uptraining, in the form of scholarships, in the form of any number of ways to put them in a position to pick up the skills required to be successful in that niche. In other words, that's a long-winded way of saying, if I were to create a DEI initiative, or rather, if I am asked to hire into a role where DEI is something that we are specifically addressing, or on which something that we focus, my first response is I got to get the best people. And if by me doing that, I am not leaning into a population of people that is underrepresented more broadly, because either the candidates have not been presented to me, or the data suggests that they're not given those opportunities as much as possible or as much as practical, then we've got to invest to level that playing field. But I don't think it comes at the point of hiring the person. I think it must come much further upstream to enable that population to grow, to be candidates for those roles that we're discussing.
I'm very naive to this subject, right? Worked in small business. And I keep stressing that is because I really wanted to try and understand from my perspective, someone who's not been around corporate America or experienced anything other than you either do the job or you don't, and if you don't, you're out, right? I've worked most of my life in Arizona, which is a right-to-work state, and now don't get me wrong. There's bad people, there's bad employees or employers that will hire for certain reasons or not. And I've just that's never been my experience. So therefore I can't relate. And I really wanted to try and understand this. And even in my small business experience, what I've noticed in having to hire and fire people as well is you have culture, right? Or first competency. We're looking at people who are competent for the job. And then we're looking for several other things. Do our values align to fit the culture that we're trying to create? Values meaning, do you value showing up to work on time? Because that's something that we care about. Do you value doing a quality job? Those are things that we care about, which goes back into some of the competence things. And I struggle with grasping this concept of I'm going to negate an employee based on anything other than can you do the job and do you fit our culture?
Yeah. You're not alone, by the way. And I think there's also a commentary in there somewhere that small business is less impacted or seemingly less, with all due respect, with seemingly less connected to a quote-unquote DEI world, or a world rich with DEI initiatives. And why is that? I think there's a commentary in there. When you are a multi-billion-dollar firm and you have, I'm going to make this up, man, but for illustration's sake, if you're a multi-billion-dollar firm and you have senior level people, leaders of the organization, by the hundreds, if not thousands, you can have a red hair initiative. That means every 10th hire must have red hair. You can have that, because the universe of those people, the number of those people, is only diluted by a fraction let's assume, by the way, we hire a red-haired person. Let's assume we work at a hardware store, a multi-billion-dollar conglomerate hardware store, and we have a hiring quota of red-haired people. But I have a list of candidates or a stack of resumes of all red-headed people, but they all come from the fine arts industry, or they all come from the botanical industry. They come from someplace completely the antithesis of hardware. Mm-hmm. Me hiring 1 in 10 of my leaders as one of those people, I am diluting the population of my 10 people of arguably experts in this space by 10%. That's not good, but it probably won't kill the multi-billion-dollar enterprise. Now, let's change that scenario and look at it from the perspective of a mom and pop hardware store in small town USA. They have 4 employees. Call it 5. If we institute the same red hair policy and we hire one of those 5 people has to be red hair, but they have no idea how to run or be a part of a leadership of a hardware store, we're now 80% diluted. And the smaller the business, the more impactful an initiative like that is. So the fact that you have had less than a really in-depth exposure to this world coming from a small business perspective is not surprising, because the stakes are so much higher. Not in terms of dollars, because that's obviously the bigger the firm, the bigger the stakes are. But the point I'm making is in terms of stakes of livelihood, being around, surviving, growing. The smaller the universe of people inside that organization, the more important it is to hire people into positions that can absolutely crush it as much as possible, as quickly as possible, without this huge learning curve. It's survival.
I hope you're enjoying this episode brought to you by LifeEdge. Did you know that we offer more than just the podcast? LifeEdge is your top source for vetted online courses and coaches to help you gain an edge in life. Visit thelifeedge.com or click the link below and sign up for our Elite Educator Pass. This gives you access to free trial offers, masterclasses, and discount codes from our partner brands that will help you level up your skill set. It's the easiest way to break free from the matrix so you can stop feeling like you're a cog in the machine. Now back to our episode. In your experience coaching over the last few years, how has DEI impacted team performance or employee engagement?
It's hard to quantify that in terms of team performance. And I'm going to answer the question from a different perspective. So in my nearly 30 years in the corporate world, I don't recall, and I worked for 3 Fortune 10 firms. I sincerely don't recall a DEI initiative or a mandated, for lack of a better term, quota for my teams to be deemed, diverse. I don't ever recall being in a situation where my boss or the HR executive said, Kyle, you're underrepresented in this minority class or this underrepresented demographic. You have an opening at this level. It needs to be one of those underrepresented demographics. I've never had that happen. Now, what has happened more than I can recall is when I've gotten to the end of the road of a hiring process and I've got a handful, maybe 2, 3 candidates in front of me, have their resumes in front of me. And that's sometimes when the pressure will come. It's like, okay, well, you've got 3 candidates. 2 of them are middle-aged white males. The third is part of some underrepresented profile or demographic. We should probably lean that way. I think that's less of a problem at that point because we have the top 3 candidates on the table. Mm-hmm. And admittedly, and I may get pushback for this, if I have 3 equal candidates in front of me, and one of them is from an underrepresented profile or demographic, I'll probably lean that way because that's my way of making that investment, however small it may be, that I talked about earlier, is going upstream and creating some opportunities that address the systemic societal and socioeconomic issues that are causing those demographics and profiles to be underrepresented. So if I can contribute to it, and hopefully that person that I hire pays it forward and has similar objectives as I do in terms of promoting excellence, I think we're better off. But I think the question that you ask is really indicative of the strains and the reason why people go into business. It's to make money and be successful and add value to their community. And if you're hamstrung rather, in doing that with less than ideal candidates just to fill a quota, you won't be around very long.
Did the quota, did this idea of, I'm trying to figure out, where is this being pushed from top down? Top corporate brass is like, this is what we're going to do moving forward? Or is this a push from society saying this is how we expect our businesses to be run and how we expect the businesses around us to be run? Because to me, that feels like a or a tail wagging the dog initiative almost. Whereas I think we forget that we, as a society, we have the power to vote with our dollars, right? And so if we don't like what a business is doing, how it's run, we just quit spending money there rather than you forcing change, which I just don't see that being the best way of going about the situation. But first, I guess I got to understand where it's coming from.
Yeah, well, you did a really good job explaining the Adam Smith philosophy that I started the conversation with. Like, we vote with our dollars in the marketplace. Mm-hmm. So again, I can really only speak to my experience, and I think the experience is relevant because I've worked for 3 Fortune 10 firms at a very senior level, including one Fortune 8 firm that where I had 15,000 employees and 40 plus locations across the U.S. I was never driving, quote unquote, driving DEI initiatives. They were never forced on me. That doesn't mean, again, my experience, but doesn't mean that's not happening in some organizations. And now, of course, we have, these third-party evaluators that say whether you are a, diverse or inclusive organization. They have these rating scales and criteria and qualifications. And while it may be unpopular, I have to just be my authentic self. I agree with you. I think it is the tail wagging the dog. I think there is a degree of societal pressure that tells companies they not only have to deliver a great product or service, they have to do it in a way that appeases everyone. And that's when we see really half-hearted attempts at inclusivity by, all the way down to the marketing. You see really, really diverse populations in commercials that have maybe been historically underrepresented, so much so that it's obvious they're pandering. And I do believe there is a short shelf life for that because it appears to be so inauthentic. It's hard to get behind an organization or a company that I feel they are pandering to me. I saw a sketch recently, or a bit that Jon Stewart did on The Daily Show, and it was exactly this, about how massive corporations feel the need to, my word, pander to the population to prove that they are good people, or that they are earning of your affection as well as your dollars. And I thought he did a masterful job explaining why we got here, why we are where we are, but how it's gone so far that it just reeks of inauthenticity. And we can't trust people or organizations if we think they're being inauthentic. So I do believe that at some point that pendulum might swing back. But it is, I think the way you framed it is exactly right, man. It is the tail wagging the dog because, let's be honest, social media probably plays a huge role in this now, where anyone with a keyboard has a voice that can be heard by anyone else. And momentum's a hell of a thing. People feeling as if they are part of a minimized or marginalized group allows them to voice their discontent more so than ever. And there is comfort in unity in those small underrepresented groups. So when I express something that it's me pointing out, I'm David pointing out Goliath and all the horrible things they do in their hiring practices and how they could be more equitable and diverse in their hiring decisions. Someone else picks up on that, so now we got a little momentum, and then a third person jumps on, and all of a sudden there's this movement. And organizations, and especially big companies, all companies are so, they try to be so connected with the profile of their typical consumer that they're kind of left a little confused. Where do I spend my ad dollars? Well, let's do one thing. Let's make sure we're really clear on one thing. We're going to spend those ad dollars in a very safe, non-abrasive, non-confrontational way that it's hard to offend anyone. So that must mean we're going to start the concept of this marketing slick or our commercials or whatever. We're going to start on such a far end of the spectrum that it's impossible to please anyone, or rather have anyone be displeased with our approach. But that inauthenticity is becoming more and more severe in those instances, and I think consumers are picking up on it, and it's going to have, again, a short shelf life.
Mm-hmm. And you talked there about people wanting to be fair and please everyone. And you know this from the years of experience, and I know this of trying to grow my own business and grow an audience and grow and serve people, is that whenever you try to please everyone, you please no one. You ultimately fail. Mm-hmm. And I think there's nothing wrong with anyone taking corporations taking a stand on what they believe, what their values are, and what their culture is going to be. That's your right as to own your own business, to be in an American company, to do that's the great part about the freedom we have in America. But I think this trying to make everything vanilla so that nobody is offended, it's like, well, that's not a world that's enjoyable to live in. I just want to say thank you for taking time to dive into this topic and try and understand something that is difficult and multifaceted. And I hope that the listeners, the viewers, will give us some grace. And if we've screwed up, leave us a comment. I'd love to keep this conversation going because this is something I'm really trying to understand. But as we continue the conversation, I wanted to move into you. I would deem you a culture expert after getting researching you, preparing for this the conversation. Your book, the subtitle, 10 Principles for Building and Sustaining a Culture of Excellence. How do values determine culture?
Well, they're everything. And I'm gonna be a nerd for a moment and just kind of geek out on a definition. So, values are incredibly important. I think values are informed by our principles. But what is a principle? So the definition, not Kyle's, but paraphrasing of Oxford Dictionary, the definition of principle is it's our system or our foundation of beliefs for a chain of reasoning. And our principles essentially define who we are. What are the things we stand for? What matters most to us? The values are kind of an outcome of the principle. So if our principles are we're going to do the right thing, for example, one of my 10 principles is we do the right thing. So fundamental, just foundational to everything we do. We're going to do the right thing. The value that we might espouse as our corporate value would be something like, delivering a product or service that our consumers can rely upon. That's an example of building a product or service that is the right thing for what that consumer needs. And I'm a principle guy, right? My whole existence, the book is created with the foundation of these 10 principles that I created while I was in corporate America. Not only do these 10 principles dictate how I perform and how I behave in the workplace, but they're also my code of conduct outside of the workplace. So if we want an organization and a team, more specifically, to be aligned around a common set of objectives, and that could be any number of things. It could be personal growth, it could be revenue, it could be market share, it could be any number of things. But if we want our teams to be aligned around those common objectives, the only way to get there is for that team to also be aligned principally, to be aligned on the same set of foundational truths that create our system of beliefs. And for me, creating my principles, the 10 We's, enabled me to essentially put them on a wall and say, this is how we behave. This is number one, how we treat each other behind the curtain, how the team will behave and treat one another. And that positions us to do the exact same thing, use the same principles, and treat those we serve externally, our customers, with these same principles in mind. Where we get it wrong so often in the workplace, and this is big business, small business, and everywhere in between, is we hire people into roles, and I think for the most part, we do a pretty good job teaching them how to do the job. The policies and procedures that we document, the statement of work that we ask them to perform, the criteria that we share with them, that these are your success criteria, your tangible KPIs, your key performance indicators. This is how we measure your success in this role. I think most companies do a fair to good job on that. Where we've really fallen short, and this is organizations of all size, we're not clear on our expectations for how members of the team should behave, including the leader, how we behave towards one another. What matters? What is our leadership legacy? What are the things that we hold true? What are our foundational beliefs for our chain of reasoning, the system of beliefs? And without establishing those principles very conspicuously, sharing them far and wide, and saying this is who we are and how we operate, the team is left to ambiguity. And ambiguity, and in my mind, ambiguity is the enemy of execution. If you want to find excellence, you can't do it in an ambiguous fashion. We have to set the path, establish where the finish line is, whatever that is. It can be any number of things for any number of people. But here's how we get there. And those principles establish that here and the how.
As we start to wrap up, there is one question I love to ask all the guests, and that is, what is one lesson that you've learned in life that you want to share with all the listeners?
Don't be afraid or shy of asking for help. I think that is so applicable in any aspects of our life. And it comes to my mind immediately because I do so much speaking in my work in the corporate world. I was asked recently, what was my biggest learning inside of those 28 years of corporate America? And it's the same answer. I remember very vividly at one point in my career, I was up for a promotion. I didn't get the promotion. Was very disappointed. I went to my boss and asked directly, what was it that stopped you from putting me in this role? And he was very quick to point out the functional areas that I led. We were underperforming at the time for very good reasons, and we had a corrective plan in place, and we were kind of digging ourselves out. But he said to me, when the results were not as good as we needed them to be, you never asked for help. You put your head down, you worked your ass off to get out of that situation, but you could have done it. It could have been done so much more easily, so much quicker, if you just raised your hand and said, Ted, I need some resources, I need some help, or I need some time, whatever it is, but you never asked for help. And it was during that conversation when someone asked me my biggest learning lesson from the corporate days, it occurred to me how applicable that is to our entire existence on this planet. If you're struggling with mental health issues, if you're struggling with any number of things that are real life issues and situations that so many of us encounter, day to day, sometimes hour to hour, rarely is the answer not talk to someone or try to raise your hand for help. Tell somebody you're struggling, whether it's your boss, whether it's a coworker, whether it's someone, your significant other. You've got to ask for help. We are tribal by nature. We're wired to help one another. It's in our DNA. So to not use that and lean on that is arrogance and sometimes ego, and we don't want to portray ourselves as weak, and asking for help feels that way at times. But that's the answer, man. Ask for help. Don't be afraid.
I love that. Where can people go to connect with you? And most importantly, where can they go to pick up your book?
Thank you for asking. So I'm essentially on every social media platform with the same handle. It's at Kyle McDowell Inc. My website, very, very same thing. It's www.kylemcdowellinc.com. Thank you for asking about where to find the book. As you mentioned a couple of times, it's Begin With We, 10 Principles for Building and Sustaining a Culture of Excellence. It's chock full with real life scenarios throughout my experience and the transition that I made from being a pretty good boss to a much better leader, and the impact that those 10 principles to 10 we's and how they enabled me to make that transition and drive massive change in really big organizations. That book is available wherever books are sold. Amazon seems to be the quickest and easiest way to get it. It's available in Kindle, ebook, and audiobook as well. I did the narration for the audiobook. I happen to think it's a little better than the print version, but it's out there for all to consume in any content medium you like.
Yeah, and I highly recommend picking up the book. I have not completed it, though. I do have 2 chapters left to go, but I will finish it. The book's fantastic. Kyle offers so much in that book. And for anyone listening or watching, I will make sure to include all those links down below in the show notes, including the Amazon link to the book. And if you like this podcast, please be sure to like, subscribe, share it with a friend so we can continue to get great guests on here like Kyle Kyle, again, thank you for your time today. Thank you for diving into some difficult topics, helping me get a clear understanding. I hope the listener, the viewer, I hope that you guys have a better understanding. And if we screwed up, please chime in, let us know maybe where we missed something or our thoughts differ. But Kyle, thank you again for your time today.
The pleasure is really all mine, man. Thank you for the opportunity to share the message on the platform. You're doing really important work, and I feel privileged to be a part of it. So thank you.
Thank you.